WWE Network, as we know it in the United States, will be no more. As of March 18th, with the announcement that WWE and Peacock, NBCUniversal's streaming service that only just launched last year, have reached a multi-year deal to give Peacock exclusive streaming rights to the network in the US. This will not affect subscribers in other countries. Thursday, March 18th is when the network will officially be migrated over. This includes all 17,000 plus hours of content currently featured on the network, so the classic stuff should not be going anywhere. It should be safe. I see no reason why it wouldn't transfer over like everything else. And it's good, too, because they just started adding episodes, finally, after all these years, of Wrestling Challenge from the very beginning. I think they have the first 13 episodes of Challenge up from 1986. I have not gotten to it yet. It would suck if it suddenly disappeared. The deal includes all pay-per-views airing on Peacock live and on demand. The first one being Fastlane on March 21st, so I guess now we know why Fastlane was suddenly added a few weeks before WrestleMania. And then both nights of WrestleMania in April. This will be the first time that WrestleMania is airing live ever on Peacock. The price point will be $4.99 a month for the ad-supported version, so if you don't mind ads, from now on you'll be paying half of what you were paying for the network before, or you can pay the same $9.99 a month for an ad-free version. It'll include a 24/7 channel, just like the network currently has right now, plus all the on-demand content. I am curious if on the ad-supported version, that means that there will be commercial breaks in the middle of pay-per-views. We get ads now during the pay-per-views. Like a match will end, they'll fade to a commercial, but it's not like an extended commercial break. So I wonder if that's going to be a little bit different. You'll have more, like, longer commercial breaks now in the middle of the pay-per-view events. I don't know. I don't know if that means more disruptions during those shows. They said that they will let everybody know as we get closer, because I've gotten a lot of emails and a few tweets about this asking me if I know anything about how or when they're going to be migrated over. They have not announced that yet. All they have said is that as we get closer, they'll explain how the migration is going to work. If you have a network account, how if it's going to be automatically ported over to Peacock and you won't have to do anything at all. Do you have to manually go ahead and set up a new account on Peacock? They said that in a few weeks, they will announce how that's going to work. If you are a Comcast customer, Comcast Xfinity subscriber, you already get the premium version of Peacock for free. So you don't have to do anything. You'll be able to get the network and all the pay-per-views 100% free. And so just like that, they have abandoned their plans for a new tiered system of the network. We kept hearing about this the last few years. They're working on it. They're working on a leveled system. They'll have 2-3 different tiers that you can pay for, including a free tier of the network. And they did unveil that. There is a free version right now of the WWE Network that's a bit stripped down from the full version. But the idea, I think, was that you would have the free tier, you'd have the regular tier for the current $9.99, and then you would have a premium tier. And that premium tier would be maybe $12.99 or $14.99 a month. And one big feature of that, this would be for like the diehards, because one of the features of that supposed premium tier was going to be more independent wrestling programming, which they've already started adding to the network over the last several months. You can find plenty of indie wrestling stuff right now on the WWE Network, but that was going to be one of the big features of a premium tier. Was all the indie content they added. They were going to be continuing to add in the future. So all of those plans now are out the window. All those plans are out the window. That probably should have been a tip-off, frankly, once they started adding so much independent wrestling content just to the current regular version of the network, that whatever plans they had for that system maybe were out the window. According to the Wall Street Journal, the deal is said to be for $1 billion over 5 years, or a little over $200 million a year. It sounds like a great deal for WWE. They get guaranteed money for the same events that they would have produced on their own anyway. It's very similar to the arrangement that UFC has with ESPN Plus. There are some big differences. Not exactly the same, but there's similarities there. NBC now is going to have to put its promotional muscle behind it to make it worth their while. So you know that they're invested in trying to make this thing a success. WWE was generating over $130 million a year domestically with the network. And for each of the next 5 years now, they have a guaranteed $200 million coming in. You know, we are still in the middle of a pandemic where they're not doing any live touring. This was traditionally a live touring company. It is quite amazing in a relatively short period of time to see how the company has changed. They used to be, it was all about live touring. You lived and died and got paid better than whatever your contract would have been for. But you really did. You got paid and you lived and died by how those live events did, how those tours and international tours did, and not getting hurt. You know, if you don't work, you don't get paid. It used to be a very different system, but they were a live touring company. It was all about the gate. It was all about the tickets. How many tickets did you sell? That's why you needed a big attraction on top, like a Hulk Hogan or a Stone Cold. You always looked to that one big attraction, that one name you could put on the marquee that would bring people in, that could help move tickets. And it really is not like that anymore. Now, when things die down, eventually, yes, they will go back on the road and they'll run different venues and not just Tropicana Field, but it's going to be a very different company. I don't think they're ever going back to that live touring schedule. I think you're going to see a very reduced schedule of shows. But they were already starting to scale back anyway. I mean, you could see the writing on the wall anyhow. They weren't making as much money off the live events. But they have gone from a live touring company to really all about not even pay-per-view. I mean, the pay-per-view even is a thing of the past now. It's TV and streaming. It's television and it's streaming. And that is really the kind of company that they have become, because look at where the majority of their income is coming from. It's not coming from tickets. It's not coming from pay-per-view. It's coming from these television rights deals with NBC, with Fox. It's coming from Saudi Arabia. I guess you could say, okay, that's touring. They got tens of millions of dollars coming in from that deal whenever they resume shows over there. But the majority, the lion's share of their guaranteed income is coming from these TV deals and now the streaming deal with Peacock. You take all this money away, all of a sudden this company is not nearly as healthy as it is right now. So it is pretty amazing to see where the transformation has occurred and what WWE used to be and what WWE is today, which is a very, very, very different company. But like I was saying, we are in the middle of a pandemic. They're not doing live touring. They're not selling whatever money they would be bringing in that way. They're not. They're not able to go on the road. They're not able to sell tickets. They're not able to sell merch at the venues, only online. So this is another way for them to bring in a shit ton of money. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad deal. I just told you. I think it's a very good deal on the surface, it looks like, for WWE. But I do see things a little bit differently in this way. It's a lot of money, but WWE is getting $1 billion from Fox over 5 years for SmackDown. NBC is getting WWE's entire library and their pay-per-views and the takeovers and the documentaries, everything for that same $200 million a year. It almost feels like they either got fleeced in a way by NBC or, more likely, Fox got robbed on that SmackDown deal. But you know what? I guess if it's all about the demo, you know, I mean, look, the SmackDown overall audience, it ricochets up and down, it ping-pongs back and forth, but they're usually number 1 or number 2 in that key demo every Friday night. So effectively, Fox is paying $200 million a year for that 18 to 49 audience. I mean, I guess that's one way you can look at it. And if that's what's most important to them, then I guess to them it's worth their while. But again, look at what NBC is getting for that same amount of money, and look at what Fox is getting. They're getting one show. Now, for the fans, I think it's good news, bad news. I think it's a mixed bag. I think it's mostly good news, but it's definitely not only good news. It's good news because now you get not only the WWE Network content, but you get access to all the content on Peacock. And I don't know all of the content on Peacock. I'm sure there's a lot of classic stuff on there, episodes of The Office, and they have old episodes of Saved by the Bell, new episodes of Saved by the Bell. They have a lot of original content on there as well. There's a ton of content. Whatever was owned, I guess, by NBCUniversal, you now have access to that. If you don't want ads, then you just pay the same $9.99 that you were paying before for the network, or you can pay half the price with the ads. It's good news because it's not like the UFC deal with ESPN+. And this is one way that they are definitely not alike, the two deals. With that deal, I believe you still have to pay $50 or $60, whatever it may be more. I don't know, maybe they raise their prices. So when they have a big pay-per-view and they have a big fight or a big Conor McGregor fight or something, it's not like this where you're just going to get access to everything for $5 or for $10. My understanding is you have to be an ESPN Plus subscriber, whatever that fee is, but you're still paying big money for the big pay-per-views. That's not how this deal works. You're not paying $50 or $60 a month, 12 times a year, for a WWE pay-per-view, which is good because a lot of these pay-per-views ain't worth $50 or $60, and it would be hard for people to justify spending that kind of money on every single pay-per-view that WWE produces. Here, you get them on the cheap. Just like you would with the network right now, you get them on the cheap. It's part of the package. You don't pay anything above and beyond that. That doesn't mean that, by the way, in a few years, they can't put some kind of system in place where prices go up. But as things stand right now, you pay that one low fee, you get access to everything. That's a good thing. That's a good thing for the fans. I already pay $10 a month for the network. I can just keep paying my $10 and basically get Peacock for free. Now, where I think it's bad news for the fans is that, much like their TV deals or their Saudi Arabia deal, the company has another $1 billion now coming in that eliminates any incentive that they might otherwise have to improve the quality of their shows. And when I say shows, I'm primarily talking about Monday Night Raw. As long as they know that they have hundreds of millions of dollars in guaranteed money coming in every single year, where is the incentive to change? Where is the incentive to improve and do better? Vince McMahon is a brilliant businessman. No one can deny that. Nobody is saying otherwise. But a lot of his shows are virtually unwatchable under his watch, under his creative vision. A lot of these shows are unwatchable. Just because the company makes a lot of money does not mean they are putting on good television. Both of those things can be true. You can be making a lot of money while also putting out a product that is inferior to what it used to be. I just want to see it get better. That's all I want. I want to see it get better. And I don't think that this does anything to change that, and if anything, my fear is that it only makes it worse. Now, Peacock has 33 million subscribers. This is per the latest numbers that Comcast released this week. That doesn't mean that WWE is going to have 33 million people checking out WrestleMania this year, but if even some of them do, if even some of those 33 million subscribers decide to check out WrestleMania, you could have a lot more eyes on the show this year than ever before. Business-wise, it makes sense. WWE Network growth in this country, I don't know what it's like in the UK, and I keep hearing from people in Canada who say the network up there is absolute shit. I know at one time, I think it was just run like an actual network, and they didn't even have the on-demand content, the VOD content. Now, Whoever's up there in Canada can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if it still works the same way or not, but I've heard from people who are up there who are not very fond of how the network operates. I think it operates differently in different countries, but in this country, the growth of the network has stagnated. 1.1 million paid subscribers is what they have. After, 2014, so it's about 7 years. This month coming up is going to be 7 years in operation. 1.1 million subscribers in this country. They've been stuck on that number, it feels like, for years now. They've basically been around that number. It has not changed. They have plateaued. They were nowhere near hitting their early projections. They were projecting 2 to 3 million. I think early on they were even projecting out 3 to 4 million subs. They never came close. And they never were going to come close to that. Wrestling has a very niche audience. And a lot of those lapsed fans that they've been clamoring to try to bring back, they're not coming back. And they're not paying $10 a month for the WWE Network, just to reminisce about the stuff they used to watch 20 or 30 years ago. As part of Peacock, maybe they get some existing subscribers to scroll over to the network now. Because no non-wrestling fan was ever going to pay $10 a month for the WWE Network. Why would they do that? I mean, think about that. It is such a niche thing. You're not going to accidentally subscribe. If you're going to pay your money and subscribe to the WWE Network, you've got to be a WWE fan or a wrestling fan or have some level of interest in the product. You're not going to accidentally stumble into a network subscription. Now, maybe with all the free offers they've thrown out there over the years, maybe some people took them up on the offer, but clearly they didn't stick around and convert all of those people into paying subscribers. On a service like Peacock, where you have 33 million subscribers, who knows who might wander on over to the WWE Network tab and check out some of the content and check out some of the documentaries or check out some of the reality shows. Don't they put replays of Total Divas on there? I mean, believe me, there's a lot of people who watch Total Divas. I know a few. I know a few. I got friends, their wives, they don't give a shit about wrestling, but they'll watch Total Divas. They got a lot of that stuff on the network, so you never know who might wander over and check out some content on the WWE tab. So that's a good thing. That's a plus. Maybe they will pick up some new fans out of it. Look, I love the network. As somebody who doesn't want to pay $50 for every single pay-per-view, because like I said, I don't think they're all worth it. The fact that I can get them, along with all the other shit they give me, for one price that I think is more than reasonable. I've said that before. I think $9.99 for the network, for the amount of content they give you, is a fucking steal. Now, I am as much into the classic content as anything. There are other people who don't care, and I know that's not what sells the network. That's why they don't push it. You don't see commercials. If you didn't go to WWENetworkNews.com or go to one of the wrestling news sites or listen to this podcast, would you fucking know that they just added the first 13 episodes of Wrestling Challenge unless I told you? Probably not. You don't see them advertising it on TV because that's not what sells the network. So they're not going to spend 30 seconds or 60 seconds of television time to plug Wrestling Challenge from 1986. I get that. But for me, as a fan from that era, that's the kind of shit that I want access to. So I get all of that, all the pay-per-views, all the WCW stuff, NWA. Their documentaries now are very good. I'm looking forward to this new Icon series that's starting up this weekend. The first episode's already up, the Yokozuna one. I'm going to watch that. There's a lot of quality stuff on this network, even if you don't give two shits about the current product. Now, if you don't want to give WWE your money, I respect that. I understand that. But you don't have to be a current fan of the current product to appreciate all of the content that they give you. I think it's a steal. If it were $5 or even $10 more, I'd pay the $5 or $10 more. That's me. So I've always felt that the network is a steal for what they give you. And the fact now that I'm going to be able to get all of this additional content from this other service effectively for free by paying the same amount of money, as a fan, I think that's pretty cool. Now, I'm not yet a Peacock user, so I'm not familiar with their user interface. One concern that I have, is it going to look radically different once it gets moved over? So, for example, one of the features I really like about the network, and it's really very helpful actually when I'm putting together like the history segments every week, if I need to very quickly refer back to something, like I want to just watch a certain segment over again, or I remember the details, but there's one detail I don't remember. If it's on the network, it's very easy for me to bring it up, and not only bring it up, but go right to a specific match or segment. They break it down almost like chapters. So if I bring up an old episode of Raw, for example, right, underneath that main window, it has it broken down by segment, and you can skip directly to what you want to watch. You don't have to sit there and scrub through the entire video. I find that feature very helpful. Does Peacock work that way? I don't know. And if not, is that functionality going to be migrated over as well? Now, we don't know yet. I would imagine not. I would just assume it's going to work the same way the Peacock does. So whatever the layout and the UI is for Peacock, that's the way that the new WWE Network is going to work. But until they actually migrate everything over and they roll it out, we just don't know. We don't know how it's going to work. We don't know how it's going to look. The other question is, what does it mean for the future of NXT? I was just talking about NXT last week. The NBC Sports Network is being shuttered at the end of the year. And that means that NHL games, NASCAR races, those things might be moving over to the USA Network by the end of the year. And that could have an impact on NXT. There's a lot of NHL games that air on Wednesday nights, and if they re-sign, because the rights are running out with the NHL, but if they keep the NHL and hockey is going to be moving over to USA Network, even if it gets lower numbers. I don't know what the NHL ratings are, but I can't imagine that NXT is going to be prioritized over the NHL. I think the writing is on the wall as far as the show being moved off Wednesdays. It could move to Tuesdays, it could move to Thursdays. It's been pointed out to me that on Thursdays, part of the year, they will face some competition, if not from the NBA, then from the NFL, which is true. Either one, I'm fine with either one. If it's Tuesday, if it's Thursday, I don't think there's any wrestling competition on that night. But Wednesday night, to me, it's just not a night that's going to work long-term for NXT. So I think a change is eventually going to come. But now you've got this relationship. And so, do they get priority now over some of those other properties? If WWE doesn't want to move and they make it very clear, let's try to find a way to keep the show on our night. I mean, does this help their cause? We don't know. We don't know the politics of this and how this may help. It won't hurt them, but we don't know how much it may help them going forward. So that's another story to keep an eye on. What happens to NXT in light of this new deal? And look, if NXT has to move, does NXT eventually move off USA and onto Peacock as an exclusive to the streaming service? It's very possible. One thing that will not be affected, you'll still have to wait 30 days before current episodes of Raw or SmackDown are uploaded to Peacock. That has to do with the existing agreements they have with NBC and Fox. I got 2 questions about that, so that will not change. You're still going to have to wait a month. I don't know why you would want to go back 30 days later and watch any of these recent Raw shows. I don't know why anybody would want to do that. SmackDown I can maybe understand. But yes, you will still have to wait the standard 30 days. You've also got to think, and I'll end with this. You've got to think that this is a good sign for when it comes time for them to negotiate a new TV rights deal with NBCUniversal. Their current one is up in 2024. And that then leads to a logical question. Could the end result, and we're talking now a few years down the road, could the end result of all of this be NBCUniversal buying WWE? They just bought the entire network. They've already have existing relationships with the company, the TV rights deal I just mentioned. Is the next logical step not for them to just make an offer to buy the company outright? To acquire the entire organization. They probably would be the leading candidate right now, I would think, if they wanted it. They'd have to put up enough money for it, but they're in prime position to be first in line to make an offer and potentially be the one to buy WWE. Vince McMahon has said before, he hasn't closed the door to the possibility of selling. He says we're always open for business. We're always open to offers and hearing what's out there. Because, again, he's smart enough to know that you don't close the door. Why would you do that? You've always got to keep that door open. But, for all this talk about Vince McMahon is getting older, and he is. He's 75 years old. And for all this talk about Vince McMahon getting older and being creatively out of touch, which he is, I also think it's a case of be careful what you wish for. Because whether it's NBC or Fox or ESPN or Amazon or Disney or whoever it may be that comes along in a few years and makes an offer to buy the company, these are big media giants. These are big conglomerates. These are not wrestling people. These are not, companies that do pro wrestling. They own lots and lots and lots of different entities. They acquire all sorts of companies and brands. And that scares me too. A lot of people long for the simpler days where they didn't have stockholders that they had to answer to, and the creative team was made up of a handful of people sitting around by Vince McMahon's pool sketching out storylines for the next 6 to 12 months. Right? We've heard Bruce Pritchard and people like that tell stories about how much easier it used to be. There's a lot of people who kind of wish we can go back. I find myself wishing. Would it not be easier to go back to those days? But the company now is much bigger now than it was 25 years ago. Thousands of employees. Offices all over the country. Offices all over the world. Titan Tower is not their only office. The company has gotten so much bigger and so much more corporate. You can't ever really just go back to the way it was. But there are a lot of people, I think, who long for the days of going back to when it was simpler and not overcomplicating things. WWE being bought out by another billion-dollar company would take things in the opposite direction. Like on steroids. It would be even more corporate. And there's no telling who they may put in charge. So I think it's just something to think about. As bad as their television shows now are right now on most weeks, what does for example, a Disney-owned WWE look like? What does an NBC-owned WWE look like? A lot of us were around when WCW was, sucked up in this whole AOL Time Warner merger. It affected them quite a bit. And that merger was a fucking disaster. But then again, so was WCW there towards the end. Things can get very messy when it comes to these big companies. But in the next 5 to 10 years, I can see that being their future.